Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2019 show. I'm your host, Don Kay. We are live from McGillivray Speedway at 30th and High School in the beautiful town of Speedway, Indiana. And don't forget, if you come into town for the BC 39 and or the Brickyard 400, be sure and stop at McGillivray's. They got great food, great service, and the adult beverages, they tell me, are ice cold. Tonight's show is presented, as always, by Honda and Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, NTT IndyCar Series, and the SVRA. A couple of things to mention. I was told over the weekend that the likelihood of AJ attending any more events, he wasn't in St. Louis and he wasn't at the one prior, Road America, and he probably won't be at the last two because he's got back problems, and I guess it's pretty severe, so he's out for the rest of the year is my understanding. How about Gateway? How many people watched it? How many people went there? How many were there? Woo! How did you like the winner? You know the interesting thing is I was out on the grid when they announced the drivers, and all the yucky doc that had been said about him, Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan provided all of the data on the cars, the information, and all the pictures, and they found that they concluded it was not his fault. When he introduced him for driver introductions, I didn't hear one boo. He got a huge ovation, which I thought was kind of interesting. So good for him. Don't forget, next up this weekend, Portland. It's next to last race of the year, and it's going to be televised live on NBC Network, not on the Sports Network, so it'll be live on that. And in case you hadn't heard, and I'm sure you have, the U.S. Nationals are this weekend. So if you get a chance to get out there and take a peek, they're a lot of fun. If you haven't been there and you get a chance to go on a Friday or Saturday night when they run in the dark. It is spectacular. It's just amazing. I want to also mention that the owners of Grand King Shops, Bill and Stephanie Throckmorton, have a vehicle that can take 6 to 8 people and do some tours of shops. If you're interested, you can give them a call and schedule it. The number is 317-820-3595. And if you are looking to buy a vintage car, a sprint car, midget, Indy car, it doesn't matter, they can restore it for you. They do it right there. So give them a call. Again, at 317-820-3959. And Wednesday night, tomorrow night, is bike night at McGillivray's. You don't want to miss that. If you got a bike or a biker, come on down. You can tell stories. Bikers have great stories. Whether they're true or not is really insignificant. It doesn't matter. And the last event of the year for the SVRA is the Vintage Grand Prix at Watkins Glen. It's on September 5th to the 8th. If you like those kind of cars, vintage cars, and you got spectacular ones, check it out. My first two guests this evening, one gentleman I've been chasing, he's getting tired of hearing from me. He finally said, yeah, just to shut you up, I'll be here. He is a co-owner of Clauson-Marshall Racing, and they've been doing extremely well. They run about 129 races a year, more if they can, and they're all over the place. I sent him a text one day and said, are you available? He said, I'm in Utah. What the hell are you doing in Utah? His son is probably one of the nicest guys I ever met. Please welcome Mr. Tim Clauson.
Thank you for having us.
And the young man sitting next to him, strangely enough, drives for him. And if anybody happened to pay attention to the Smashdown, he won it. Even from being upside down, he still won the series. He's done a spectacular job, and he drives for Clauson-Marshall Racing, and they're doing really well this year. Please welcome Mr. Tyler Courtney. I'm going to start with you, Tim. The tragedy of losing your son, did it ever cross your mind, we're going to stop racing? That's what caused our problem. Did it ever say no? Or if you did, how long did it take you to say, no, that's what you want us to do?
Well, Bryan and I traveled so much together over his years of racing that, we talked about every subject that you could think of. and a conversation that we did have was one of those what-if conversations. And it actually happened the night we lost Jason Leffler. We were racing Gas City that night, and that one kind of hit Bryan a little harder than the rest. And Bryan had been around racing his whole life, and I had lost friends in racing, and Bryan had kind of lived that with me as a kid. So he understood the risks that come with this sport. But when we lost Jason, for whatever reason, that one hit him a little different. And we were driving home that night, and I said to him that we didn't have to go race the next night. And Bryan had a way when, especially with me, if he thought I said something that was dumb, he had a way of looking at me and kind of cocking his head with his eyes squinted, and he did that, and we got pretty deep that night on the way home about the what if scenarios, and one thing that he said to me was, Dad, I'm a racer because you're a racer, and if something were to happen to you, I'm going to continue on with this sport, and God forbid if something happened to me, I would want you to continue on as well. That doesn't mean that, when we lost Bryan, that we said, well, we're just going to keep going in the sport. But I knew I would never walk away from it. And then what happened, the days, the moments, the days, the weeks, and even to right now, the outpouring from the racing community that has just engulfed our family with love and caring. There's no way we could walk away. Now, to think we would be doing it at this level that we are now, I don't think that even we would think that we would be doing all the stuff that we're doing now.
You are on the track, I said, about 129 days or nights a year, and you run both midget sprint cars. Mm-hmm. Have you decided, while we're here, they're running Silver Crown, why don't we do that?
That's probably the one series I won't run. I'm just, I'm in my heart, I'm a short track midget sprint car guy. It's what I grew up around, what I watched, what Bryan and I did together. It truly is my love. But with that, there are bucket list events that I want to do. And when Bryan put his Chasing 200 tour together, the conversation that really started that whole thing was he had made a decision that he didn't want to be just a USAC racer or just a midget racer or just a sprint car racer. What he wanted to do was be at every big event in the country, especially at the short track level. As we've grown out our programs, I've kind of looked at that and we did a couple things this year that have allowed me allowed me and us as a team to do check off some of those big bucket list type races. But I'm the type of guy also that I don't want to just go there to be there. I want to go there to compete and to put ourselves in a position to win.
Well, that's the whole idea, and that the thing that impressed me is how well he did when he got a shot at the Speedway, a one-off deal, and that's difficult to do just one race here, but he did well. And the thing that impressed me also, I think in his first year you had a meeting, a get-together in Noblesville. Mm-hmm. And when he went out to qualify, of all the guys were there, he got the biggest hand of anybody in the place, that impressed me the hell out of me. Yeah,
I think, it's, that was in 2012, I think, is what we're talking about there when he went there with Sarah Fisher and Andy. And, I think Randy Bernard was really the catalyst of that. And it really, that came from Randy going to a lot of the short track races here in Indiana and seeing this following that drivers like Bryan at the time, like Tyler has now, of fans that follow him and, follow these short track drivers. And it's not just here in Indy, but, it's when these guys spend their time to build their fan base across the country. It's kind of like the old days. That's whether you're talking IndyCar or NASCAR, these guys beat around the country, learning their craft, becoming great race car drivers, but then from the economic side of it, building a fan base that followed them wherever they went. When Bryan went to Indy in 2012, I don't think it was lost on anybody, the ovation that he got when he pushed out to qualify, but then also the number of just dirt track shirts that were at the track, and not just Bryan's shirts, but everybody's shirt. And I think to this day that still resonates out there.
Tyler.
Yes, sir.
You don't have to call me sir. Just you can salute a little bit, but don't let them see you. What's it like driving for Clauson-Marshall Racing? Because they've obviously given you cars you can win with.
Yeah, no, it's definitely no. I have no excuses on the equipment end of it. Most of the times it's on me if something happened or stuff like that. So no, it's been great. The Clausons have been, kind of a staple in my career and been more like family here. Probably the last, I think we were talking the other day. It's been about 10 years since I started working for them as a crew guy when I was 15 or 16. So, and ever since then, I've just kind of always been around a little bit. I went off and started my own sprint car deal and stuff like that. And then 2016 when everything happened, and Tim came to me with they were wanting to start or keep racing, and everything has gone really well. I think we've kind of exceeded a lot of the things that we ever thought we would do, and we've won a championship. We're in contention for 2 more championships this year, so it's been great. It's been fun, and we do it all for the right reasons, and I think that's what makes it the most fun part.
What got you started in racing?
My grandparents owned Putnamville for like 16 years.
Oh, jeez.
And
excuse me.
so I think my mom told me and my brother we were 2 weeks old when we went to our first race. So it's just kind of always been something we've done. It's in the blood, and you can't get it out now.
Are you a full-time professional driver, or do you work Monday through Friday
No,
at McDonald's or
just
something?
just race now. We race quite a bit, like you said,
Yeah.
about 100 races a year. So it's tough to kind of have a job. I'll go to the shop. I don't do a lot because Rizzy doesn't let me do a whole lot. But if they need errands run around, if they don't have time to leave the shop, I'll go do stuff like that for them, and just little stuff. But most times just focus on racing and getting that job done.
Have you got in the back of your mind that you'd like to follow Bryan and take a shot at the 500?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's every kid's dream, especially growing up here in Indianapolis, and it's just something you always want to do, especially as a race car driver. And then obviously when Bryan kind of opened those routes back up to get us back there, I think it makes you want to work a little harder to be the next guy to do it. So, hopefully, with what Clauson-Marshall is doing at the Speedway, hopefully, I think it's a work in progress to kind of get a dirt track guy back there. But, I do know that they're working on it in some sort of way. But, if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, then I'll keep racing short track and doing what I love.
It's interesting. If I'm not mistaken, I think once you started working, I believe Bryan wanted to put you in a car, did he not?
I think a little bit, and they did. They put me in a car, and I flipped it. And
Yeah, so the story goes.
Uh-oh.
Tyler showed up with his dad at our shop, and Bryan and I were building our first USAC midget team. And Tyler and his dad came in and sat down, and basically, to paraphrase, Tyler said he wanted to be a race car driver. And you might have been 14 at the time,
Yeah,
I think.
something
And I said, well, that's easy. We can make that happen. And he kind of sat up in his chair, and I said, just have your dad write a check. And he said, well, that's just it. We can't. And Bryan and I, when we built our first midget team, we were kind of in that same position. We were, we had just enough to go racing. We had to win to keep going. We had to buy used motors, parlay those into better motors. So I made a deal with Tyler that if he'd come on the road with us and help in the shop, I couldn't promise him a ride, but at the end of the year, if we had any equipment left over, I'd put him in something for a night. And we went on to win the USAC National Championship that year, and that was our first championship as our own team with Bryan. And Tyler Sunshine he just worked his tail off all year to the point where we got to right before Kokomo Smackdown, we were starting to freshen our cars for to go out west and hopefully finish off the championship. And we were building a brand new car for Chili Bowl, and Bryan said, hey, why don't we put a car together and let Sunshine run Smackdown? I think Bryan was running a crown race the next day, and I think he ran for another team that night in the midget. And so we went ahead and put Sunshine in the car. And I told Sunshine, keep it low key. Let's just us go up there. And I think he got the message. Maybe some family members didn't. And he had 100 people up there watching. And I'm talking his kindergarten teacher and, babysitters. And so we go out to hot lap, and he comes off a 4, takes the green flag, goes into 1, and just does the dumbest flip you've ever seen. It wasn't even spectacular enough to get on TV or anything. It just went in and flopped over, landed, but it blew everything out of the car. So I'll never forget this. I was walking on the track from turn 4 to go where the crash was. As he's walking out of turn 1 to go back to the pits, and as he makes the turn, there's 100 people following him. And his head was down, and Bryan ended up racing that night. I think he crashed, broke his hand, and he had to run the crown race. So we had to go to the hospital to get a cast on that he could still run the crown race with. And on our way back home, we're pulling into the shop probably 6:37 in the morning. And as we're getting close, I told Bryan, I said, I don't think we'll ever see Tyler Courtney again. And as we pulled in, there's Tyler sitting on the steps waiting for us to get to the shop. And I don't know how long he'd waited there. I've never really asked him. I really don't care. It doesn't matter. But as we got out of the car, I said, what are you doing here? And he said, and he called me Mr. Clauson in that moment, which he hadn't since that first day that he told me he wanted to be a race car driver. He said, if I can tear your stuff up, I can be here to tear it down. And in that moment, it really did more. It showed me the desire that he had to truly be a race car driver, not just to get in and drive a race car, but to be a race car driver, to be part of a team. And so we went ahead, and I think we left you at the shop. We went and did the crown deal. And on the way to the crown deal, Bryan said, you know we're building him a car for Chili Bowl, right? And I said, yeah, I figured that. And we ended up building him a new car for Chili Bowl. He went down there, had a great showing down there, was Rookie of the Year, and that kind of kick-started his career with us.
Now, there's one thing I got to ask. You said it a number of times, and I saw some people look, what the hell is Sunshine? Where'd that come from?
So there's a movie called Remember the Titans, and there's this character in it.
Put it up, please.
There's a movie called Remember the Titans. There's a character in it, and he had the long blonde hair like I used to have. And so when I started working for Bryan and Tim, I had the long blonde hair, and I was this young kid, and I was always smiling. And Bryan said, "Man, you look like Sunshine from Remember the Titans." So he started calling me Sunshine, and the rest of the crew guys started calling me Sunshine. And then, everybody in the USAC pits calling me Sunshine. Then I show up to Chili Bowl, and when we left the shop to go to Chili Bowl, my name visor said Courtney. Like, that's what it said. But when I got to Chili Bowl, my name visor said Sunshine. So, and ever since then, really for a while, more people didn't even know my real name. It was just Sunshine. So, Bryan basically branded me without knowing it, and it's been fun.
Yeah, I think, too, that if you put a poll out there, who's the best driver in USAC right now, and you said Tyler Courtney or Sunshine, that Sunshine would outvote Tyler Courtney. And most people would think it's two different drivers.
Yeah.
So you said you won 2 championships. Which championships have you won?
Well, we're in contention for 2 this year. We won the Sprint Car Championship last year. It was our first year actually having a Sprint Car team at Clauson-Marshall, and so this year we're leading the midget points, and then we're second in the Sprint Car points right now. So it's been a great year. I think as a team we've won over 10 midget races and over 10 midget races, then 6 or 7 Sprint Car races. So yeah, it's been a great year.
Yeah, we're almost to 20 wins as a team right now for the year.
That's not bad.
Not bad at all.
Have you, Sunshine, do you have a favorite track that fits your driving style? Now, people think it's a track. What is their driving style? But there's a big difference.
I don't know. I think Kokomo, it's always got a kind of a special place in my heart, at least.
Won there this weekend,
and I always run pretty good there, and but I like half miles. I like the big half miles: Terre Haute, Eldora, Knoxville, Port Royal. Really, the bigger tracks just kind of fit my style and what I like to do. But if I had to, always my answer is Kokomo. But I don't know. It's kind of where everything's kind of started for me, and I've had a lot of success there, and then just fun.
And when Tony Ellett used to run, that was his weekly payday.
Yep.
Because he cleaned everybody's clock there all the time. Are you becoming the next?
We don't really run a lot of local races there, but it seems like when we go there with the USAC races, we usually run pretty well. And I think in the SmackDown as a whole, we haven't finished worse than 4th in the last 6 races they've had there. So it's been pretty good.
That's not bad, considering one of the heat or something you ended up upside down.
Yeah.
That's kind of slow you down a little bit.
A little bit. Knocked the confidence down a little bit for that night, but we came back, and the guys worked their butts off to get the car back together. We didn't even have to we pulled down the backup car, but we didn't end up using it. So, I think it says a lot about our guys and what they do to prepare to make sure we don't have to go to a backup car, and we can keep our qualifying time and stuff like that. So, just it was tough, but we made it happen, and we won.
Your partner, Mr. Marshall, he's been involved with Bryan and with you, obviously, for quite a while.
Yeah, he has. When we run Chili Bowl every year with a multi-car team.
Yeah.
Lately, more multi than anything. But God, it must have been. What year did Bryan win Chili Bowl? 14?
2014.
Yeah, I think it was 14. We had the year. I think the year before. Bryan had a great battle with Sammy Swindell and Kevin Swindell, and I mean it was epic. And after the race, we ended up. I think Kevin won that year.
Yeah.
And after the race, Ricky and Bryan, who had been friends forever, Ricky came over and said, if you need a teammate to go run against the Swindells, I'm in. And so we put this deal together for Ricky to come run for us. And Richard and Jennifer Marshall came on as a sponsor for Ricky. They had known Ricky through the NASCAR stuff. And so we got to know each other. And Chili Bowl for us is, while it's a racing environment, first and foremost, but there's a lot of networking that goes on there, a lot of socializing. We've always kind of done, where people come in, we feed people, do the whole deal. So we got to know them on a really fun level, and really ever since that time, they became a part of Bryan's career. No matter what Bryan did, whether it was the midgets, the sprint cars, or when he went back to Indy for the second time in 15, they were a big part of that that program as well.
And they're with you now, as I said, and are part of your team that entered the car in the 500 this past year with Pippa Mann. That went fairly successful for you, I would think, for a one-off and your first shot at it.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, look, I listen to shows and I read the internet, and I mean, there was talk of us.
Time?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I do in my spare time,
I see.
and I know there was an awful lot of people that said we wouldn't get within 10 miles an hour of making the show. And
I saw that.
And one of the things that I do on all my racing programs, I don't do this anymore because I have to. I do it because I want to. I feel like with the success that I had with Bryan, with our own teams, and then the success that he went on to have, I've lived a very good life doing this racing deal. I do it now because I want to, and I want to do it with people that I enjoy going racing with. 2 years ago, when Pippa went to the Speedway, she went there as an ambassador for Driven to Save Lives and for Donate Life, a cause that is very, very dear to my heart. It's a cause that gets me through every day of my life. And so she goes there, does a wonderful job not only representing the team, and the cause, but more importantly, our family, and then most importantly, Bryan. She doesn't make the show, doesn't qualify, and all she did after that moment, and I've been around race car drivers enough to know that in that moment, most of them walk away only to come back when it suits their needs. She continued to work for the cause and to represent our family right through race day. In that time period, I really didn't think it would even be a reality that we could put a team together. And when Pippa and I were talking that race day, when she wasn't in the race but still doing all the right things, I told her if I was ever part of an Indy 500 effort, I would want her to be a part of it. Bryan always told me, because they were teammates with Dale Coyne in 2016, and Bryan had always told me that people don't really realize what a good race car driver she is, but more importantly, how good she was in the engineering room, that she ran a lot of those meetings. And so, two things from that. When we decided to do this Indy 500 program, I had a promise that I had made a commitment to that I was going to honor first and foremost. But second, going back, I also understood that I needed to have somebody not only in the driver's seat but outside the driver's seat that knew how to navigate Indy and the Speedway and all that goes with it, because it is more than just unloading in the garage.
Oh, yeah.
And so to go there, we went there with a plan. We had limited resources. We spent the whole practice doing nothing but working on qualifying runs. I mean, ducking out of drafts, not to try to fool ourselves or put ourselves in a bad position. And rolled out for qualifying day. We really thought if we qualified 25th, we would be locked in, and we thought it was attainable by what we were seeing on all the no-toe charts. And we roll out that first round, and we go 20th quick, not 25th. So we thought we were, pretty safe in the show. And then the track got faster, and it got faster. And again, this is where some of this knowledge comes in. We thought we were so safe, we didn't even think to get back in line until essentially it was too late. We weren't going to get a next run at it. But fortunately, our run was good enough to get in. And, when I sat there and thought of not too long ago that, we were being kind of mocked and laughed at about even trying to do this effort, to be battling a Ganassi car and a McLaren car to make the show. It's probably post-August of 2016. The greatest 45 minutes of my life in the sport, because we lived every emotion that you could possibly live. And then, of course, go to race day, and our goal was really a top 20, stay on the lead lap, and we ended up running 16th. And it showed me that we could build a program that could be competitive out there. I didn't want to go out there with just a 33 car field, because I'm a competitor, I'm a racer. It excited me that we were going to have to fight to get in the show, and so to get to do that with a bigger field of cars was pretty satisfying.
Now, that sound like something you can handle, Sunshine?
Only one way to find out.
Yeah.
That's true.
He's got a midget and a sprint car championship to win before we worry about Indy.
Well, fortunately, that season will end, and then May is next year.
Yeah. No, I would definitely take the challenge. That's for sure. So, but yeah, like you said, we got a lot of racing left to do this year before we start really worrying about the rest of it. And but yeah, no, I don't think you could call me a racer if I would say no to that.
But you've got 3 other teammates, it seems to me. I mean, you're running 4 cars. There's 3 other guys somewhere.
Yeah.
Are you going to have to beat them over the head with a 2x4 to get in the car?
If that's what it takes.
Something that came up after it was clear that Bryan wasn't going to make it, or after maybe he didn't, and somehow, I think the question came up, is he going to donate his organs? And somebody knew and went and checked his wallet and said, yes, he is.
Yeah, well, and that, the way it all played out, when we left Belleville, Kansas that night, they took us to Bryan Medical Center in Lincoln, Nebraska. And you know how race car drivers are. They're in their fire suits, their clothes. I don't know half the time where y'all keep your wallets and that. Lauren Stewart, his fiance, grabbed his bag of stuff and brought with him. And so when we found out, the chances are, we had there's a group of doctors that come in that kind of covers every area, and they warned us that the neurosurgeon is pretty blunt. And he came in and basically said, it's over. We've got to wait 12 hours to do another test, but start making your plans. Honestly, in that moment, I had checked out. I really had no reason even to come back to Indiana. Lauren, the next morning, thought to check his wallet, and I think maybe her dad even said, hey, do you know if he was a donor or not? And so she got his wallet, found his license, and she came to us and was like, hey, he's a donor. What does this mean? And at that point, really, in that moment is when I saw just a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. And so we went to the doctors, and they kind of explained to us what the process would be. But because Bryan's death was out of state and he was a donor in Indiana, we still had to sign off on it. And of course, knowing that was his wishes made it a lot easier. It was a no-brainer at that point. If that's what his wish was, then that's what we're going to support. I'm honest enough to say that if not for him having that, if they would have asked me on my own in that moment, I think I would have said no, and I'd have probably fought somebody for even asking. And that's when the whole Driven to Save Lives and organ donation and registering on the national registry became so important to our family.
And it's blossomed tremendously. I mean, I think I read somewhere that as a result of what he did and you guys promoted, there's been over 18,000 lives that have been saved for people signing up and participating.
Yeah, and I think as it all plays out, it's just going to grow exponentially. The last numbers that I saw, real live numbers for registering, it was like 12,000 people that register. And if you factor that they can, donate up to 5 organs to save lives, that just carries on. But the other thing that it did is it opened up a conversation in a sport that normally doesn't want to talk about death and that. And it was really odd. The first person that ever came up to me, we had gone to Knoxville the week after Bryan's. In fact, we left the hospital and drove to Knoxville for 2 reasons. Number one, the racing community there was just this outpouring that was going on. I had several good friends of mine that called and said, Tim, I just wish you and your family could see what they're doing for you. But the other factor is that we had a winged outlaw team there that Bryan was supposed to drive for at the Knoxville Nationals, and they were going to announce that he was going World of Outlaw racing the next year with them. So we had this whole other part of our family that was at the racetrack mourning, and we really felt we needed to go support them as much as they were supporting us. And while we were there that week was the first time that somebody came up to me and said, can I share a story with you? And of course, I think it's going to be about Bryan and an interaction that they had. And he shared with me that his wife was a heart recipient of about 15 years, and they never got to meet their donor family. And they felt this guilt for not being able to say thank you. And so he said, I just want you to know that you will be forever the face of our donor family, and the way you guys have supported organ donation has just been incredible. And that has just continued to grow and grow and grow. And it's become kind of a strange piece of us now, of our legacy, is that now, we'll have people now, because it's been long enough that people who have signed up through Driven to Save Lives have now donated organs. And so their family members will reach out just to let us know what it did for them in that moment. And, I always say it's a cool feeling to know that Bryan's choice, his gift, has now spread that much, and it's funny for me to say that, but it truly does hit that it's making that kind of impact.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I think it's a credit to him to have thought ahead to that point. That if something happens, why not? I mean, what good are they to any?
Yeah, and as we've grown through this, and of course our story's been shared a lot. We actually found out the moment he made the decision. He was in a health class in high school, and a advocate from Indiana Donor Network was in doing a presentation. He was, I think, 15 at the time, and she talked about it and all that, and he actually went up to that health teacher and said, hey, when I get my license, that's something I'm going to do. What good are they for me when I'm gone? Right. And so to kind of know exactly the moment that decision was made was pretty cool.
It's amazing, and as you are aware, and thousands of people have told you, Bryan was a very special guy. I had talked to him prior to that. He was going to be in town a week or 2 after. I forget what it was. I said, would you do the show? Sure. And I've invited him. I think he's been here maybe 3 or 4 times, and it was never, no, if I'm in town, sure.
Yeah.
Just a great guy. What did you start in go-karts like most kids?
Quarter midgets.
You started quarter. Oh, you went right one step up.
Yep, the quarter midgets at the Mini Indy there at the state fairgrounds.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm.
Did you run it by the time you got to Putnamville, Graham? Nobody owned it.
No, yeah, they didn't own it when I raced there. But I got to win a USAC race there last year, and that was pretty cool to get to do that. So, but yeah, I did the quarter midgets, and then moved up to the 600 micro sprints, and then ended midgets and sprint cars after that.
Is there a track you like? Yeah, you said that Kokomo obviously is, well, that had to be quite interesting, because I got to think when you first started, you thought, oh boy, we're not doing real well to start with. Yeah,
no, it's definitely been a roller coaster, but everything. I believe everything always happens for a reason. So, but it's just been fun. I've had a lot of downs and I've had a lot of ups too. So you just got to take the good with the bad and make the most of every situation.
How much longer do you think? Is there anything you want to do besides midgets and sprint cars? I mean, you want to go, obviously, if you got invited to the 500, and I got to think at some point in time, Clauson-Marshall will run perhaps more than one event. if possible. And that no.
No, I mean, honestly, we've been approached with some things that, looking, but really my heart is in two places. It's in the short dirt tracks of America, and it's at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And if we did run another IndyCar event, it would mean I'd probably miss 3 or 4 dirt races, and I'm not prepared to do that. That truly is what I love doing. I love everything about it, as much as I love running the Indy 500.
Who came up with the BC 39 name? Whose idea was that?
I believe it was Doug Bowles. But the whole idea of doing a dirt track at IMS started in, I believe it was July of 2016, when the year that Tony Stewart was retiring. And Doug wanted to do something special for Tony. Yeah. I think Tony might have said, hey, look, I've got enough cars and horses and hats. And so Doug had this idea of building a little dirt track out there in Turn 3, just kind of grading it out, inviting some guys with midgets because he knew Tony loved running midgets, and just go out and spend an afternoon. And so we had actually raced in, I believe we were in Arkansas running the midgets, and we destroyed about everything we had down there, motors, cars. We got home Sunday. Bryan had to go to, and I believe this event might have been on a Monday or a Tuesday. I think it was on a Tuesday. Bryan had to go to Missouri to get fitted for his wing car, and I'll never forget it because I did not really want to go to IMS that day because we had such a mess on our hands. Bryan called me that morning, and I was hoping he was calling to tell me that he wasn't going to make it. And he said, well, we're all done. Man, I'm tired. I said, good, we don't have to go. And he goes, oh, no, we're going. I'm just telling you I might be there a little late. So we patched together what we could, loaded up, and went out there. And honestly, it was probably one of the greatest days ever spent at a racetrack because it was just a group of guys out there just having fun. And so they started off running cars by themselves, and then, of course, they got Tony and Bryan and Sarah out there to do, 3 people that had ran Indy. Sarah pulled in. Tony kind of pulled up next to Bryan, and they raced for 2 laps, and they got going after it. So they finally wowed them down. Well, they pulled in, and it was actually Doug Bowles that had the idea of, hey, let's have a race tonight. I've got, $500 I'll put in. Well, they ended up raising like $4,000 or $5,000 for this race. I think Doug kind of figured out a way around the lawyers and maybe not telling them, asked for forgiveness in the morning. Yeah. But it was actually Bryan that went up to Doug and said, hey, look, I think you're making a mistake here. And and it isn't about money, it isn't about this, but every one of us want to be the first guy that wins at IMS, whether it pays $1 or $10,000. And Doug tells a story that for once in his life, the driver was actually the voice of reason. And one of the memories I have there was it was getting dark, the sun's going down. We're kind of getting ready to load up, and truly it was just a magical evening out there. And I watched Doug and Bryan kind of walk out, and you could see them start pointing out where they might put a racetrack down, and that was really the catalyst for for what we're going to get to do next week.
And the interesting thing, I think people stop and realize, there's guys from NASCAR that are coming. They're coming from all over, and a lot of it has to do in honor of Bryan.
Absolutely, and I got a couple phone calls today who drivers that Bryan had got to know while he spent some time down there with Chip Ganassi that are actually changing plans. Last year I think they were like, it's just a dirt race. Well, they're changing their plans to make sure that they're in town to watch Wednesday and Thursday night, which is pretty cool.
Well, it's very interesting. He was a great guy, and the fact that you're continuing and honoring what he loved to do and continuing, his name goes on. And what he did by signing up as a 15-year-old has saved many, many lives. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Yeah. Have you signed up yet? Have you put
yeah, it was the first thing I did when I turned 16.
Really?
I was an organ donor because my whole family's been organ donors, and actually my uncle has one of my aunt's kidneys, and I think they celebrated 30 years a couple years ago. So
really,
yeah.
Oh, it's amazing what can happen. Well, I thank you for your time.
Thank you for having us on.
Now, the next time I text you to see if you're on, you can say, I've been there, shut up. But I've enjoyed having you.
Thank you.
Keep an eye on it. BC 39 Tim Clauson and Sunshine, Tyler Courtney. My next guest is coming up, and I want to remind you, if you haven't already subscribed, you need to subscribe to Speed Tour. It's a fabulous magazine put out by SVRA, first-class magazine. You can subscribe very easily. Just go to svra.com and sign up for it. It's first class, great stories, very interesting stuff to follow. So if you get a chance, get it. You'll find out what's going on in SVRA and where some of these cars are that you used to know as a kid. Do you need insurance yet for your home, your car, your commercial property? Do what I've done and a lot of people have done. Talk to Mike Pardee at VP Insurance. They're located at 5004 West 16th Street at Speedway. Call them up, get an appointment, go see them. His number is 317-248-0070. And if you wonder why these guys and gals love to drive Indy cars, the way you can find out is very simple. You go to IndyRacingExperience.com and find a date that works and sign up for it. Or you can call the office, talk to Sean. The number is 317-243-7171. But if you go online, pick out a date, and in the promo box put SJ1, you get a 50% discount. And there's been nobody that I know of, that I've heard of, that has ever backed out. One person pushed the button to stop the car. When they found out about it, they went back out anyway. So it's a great ride. You'll have a great time. And it's a place to be. It's a place to try and see, why do they like to do this? When you get done, you'll say, ooh, now I know. My next guest is a gentleman who will be competing this next Thursday at the BC 39. He's one of only 6 drivers in the history of the United States Auto Club to win all 3 national titles, a midget, sprint car, and Silver Crown. He's been around a long time. He's got a lot of wins, a lot of awards, a lot of everything. But he stepped down tonight and he came here. Please welcome the one, the only, Jerry Coons, Jr.
Thanks for having me.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks.
Things are going well for you.
Can't complain.
Well, you could, but who cares?
Nobody listens.
That's true. I got the same problem.
Yeah.
About a lot of things, nobody listens to me. It's, what do you know? Nothing. What got you started in Tucson, Arizona, driving race cars?
Oh, just probably like most people. Just my dad raced
did he?
Around Arizona, mainly around Arizona, and a little bit in California, and some in Albuquerque. There was a track over there that I went to, and just one of those deals. He had stopped before I was born, but I have 2 older sisters. My middle sister and he got us started in quarter midgets, and kind of all started from there.
When you started, did you ever come to your mind that I'm going to be a professional full-time race car driver? Was that your goal, or did you, as you went along, you started falling in love with it and said, boy, this is kind of fun?
Yeah, I never knew you could do it for a living. I didn't realize growing up in Arizona I was racing, and I didn't know you could do that full-time like that. And it wasn't until probably later on that I realized that. I mean, even when Jeff Gordon would come out west and race, I didn't realize what all was going on there. And so, yeah, it really wasn't until I was older and about 96, 97 is kind of when I started figuring that out. Again, I was in my 20s, mid-20s, and just kind of came back and ran Belleville. Had been running Belleville and ran good there, and that just kind of snowballed from there with a couple different rides. And that's when I kind of figured out, hey, I want to go try to do this for a living. That was in 98 when I came back here for the first time.
California was, I don't know if it is quite as much as it used to be, what was a racing headquarters of the country at one time. Is it still, and is Indiana the place to come if you want to be a professional short track driver, or IndyCar driver for that matter? This is the place to be?
Oh, it definitely is, for sure. And that was probably in the 90s. The West Coast was very strong when midgets. The USAC Western State Series was very strong, and that's where a lot of people were coming from. And that was kind of, I almost went to California for a year to kind of try to jumpstart coming back here. It was actually a year Ricky Shelton had been running for the kind of a house car for Esslinger. It was his own car, but he was working, taking care of Esslinger's cars out of their shop. And the ride when Keith Coons was working for Pete Willoughby, and they had hired Rusty. They were going to run 2 cars, and Rusty Coons had came on, and it was kind of came between me and Ricky to run the other car. I had ran Belleville for Rusty and knew Rusty, so Rusty was kind of trying to get me to run. They wanted Shelton because they could kind of look back, and that was one thing they were able to look back at the West Coast races, look at qualifying times, look at feature wins, and they had records of all this. And so when I looked at that, I thought, well, okay, I need to go to California and kind of maybe run for a year or two and get some recognition there to get back there. But fortunately, I actually flew to California, went and stayed with Dan Esslinger, and met with him about going to do kind of taking Ricky's spot a little bit. But fortunately, some things worked out that I came back here, ran some races, and hooked up with the team back here.
Is there, now you run both midgets and sprints as well. Which one do you prefer? Which one do you have, or are they both one as exciting as the other to drive?
I've always liked midgets. I think just because that's what I started in when I was young, raced for a long time. I mean, I dabbled in sprint cars through those times, but midgets were always kind of the more consistent car that I ran, and I always felt more comfortable in a midget. I felt like I could take a midget if it was off a little bit. I could make up for it, whether it be just kind of driving, putting it in the right spot, making shock adjustments on the fly. Where a sprint car, I felt like it needed to be dialed in. Like I could win races and I could be okay, but it needed to be on. I couldn't carry a sprint car. I couldn't really make those adjustments. Where the midget, I just always felt at home in.
Do you obviously you must prefer dirt? Do you run pavement at all?
Yeah, I mean the championships that we won was back when you had to run pavement and dirt, and I wasn't as successful on the pavement. I didn't run as much pavement, especially in the sprint cars. It was the sprint car when I started driving for Hoffman's. Tracy Hines had gone on to run some truck stuff, and they were wanting to fill in on have a full-time dirt driver, which was me. And Tracy was running some pavement. Then after that, they were using some pavement-only drivers. Dave Steele ran the car, and I don't remember who else. But for those couple years, I was always on to Richard. It's like, hey, let me run both cars. Like, we can win a championship. I can win a championship. And it took about 2 years of being on him. And finally, 2008 was the year he said, okay, you're the guy this year. You're going to run full time. We won the championship. So I hadn't run as much pavement, but I have won pavement race in all 3 series and enjoyed the pavement, but certainly like the dirt better.
You've had some success at Eldora.
Yeah, Eldora was a place that I was terrible at. I mean, I can remember being in a sprint car. That CED team that I drove for, they had a sprint car, and I'll never forget going into turn 3. I qualified terrible, so I'm on the front row of a heat race. I'm leading a heat race. I go into turn 3. The sun gets in my eyes, and I think I'm about to hit the wall. I jerk the steering wheel, and I spin out. And I was not good there at all. And so when I started driving for the Hoffmans, it was one of those situations where I'm either going to get good here or I'm going to get fired. This is kind of their home track. They win races there, and that was a nice thing. That was with Rob and Richard stuff. I went to Rob and I was like, look, I know I'm not that good here. I need help. Just help me out. And I'd be out there and I'd come in and say, okay, what do I need to do? And Rob, even though Rob really didn't race, they've watched how many races in their life, and he just worked with me over time. Hey, these guys are here in the corner. You're here. This is the attitude of the car. You need to be here. And lo and behold, later on, I'm still have the track record there in the non-wing sprint car. I've won in all 3 cars there. So it was a real big turnaround. But it was one of those deals that it was job security. Is what it was.
As I said in introducing you initially, you are one of only 6 guys in the history of the United States Auto Club to win all 3 national series. Did you get the ring from Tony for doing that?
Tony wasn't. Yes, I did get the ring. Tony wasn't at the banquet that year, but
yeah.
Yes, definitely got the ring.
And that's pretty neat for him to do that to anybody that wins all 3 championships, the Triple Crown. He does do it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful ring. I've got it. I wear it one time a year to the banquet. I put it on and wear it to the banquet, but it's quite an honor to wear that for sure.
How is the competition now? Is it because we see a lot of these young kids, they haven't had sheet time yet. They don't understand that you can be in trouble. And I see some of them, doing something, you go, uh-oh. How is the competition today?
It's tough. I mean, it really is tough. Yes, there is some of that. I think, and that's probably just some old guy talking sometimes. But I do think that racing's changed a little bit. But man, I tell you, it is as competitive now as it's probably ever been. I mean, you look at the qualifying times, and it is just ridiculous on the qualifying and the competition. So the talent level is definitely up. I think it's changed from when it was the Jay Drake and Jason Leffler and Tracy Hines and Dave Darlin's going at it. So I do think the racing's changed, but I tell you the talent is it's there because they're on the gas and they're not always afraid to lift.
Yeah, that's true. But you still win with regularity. I mean, it's not that you win once a year. You're still up there. How much does experience count? Can you come up on somebody and have a pretty good idea what they're going to do?
Well, I mean, it just depends. I mean, there's times where it's good. I mean, I haven't really. I won a Power I race last year. Haven't won anything this year. It's definitely changed a little bit, and there's situations to where I think that experience comes in, and I think that happens on some tracks late. I think the biggest thing that I've been able to pull off sometimes is, there'll be a yellow with 3 or 4 laps to go. You've watched these young guys, whatever, just hammering each other on the top, and I've been able to say, okay, I'm going to park it here on the bottom and let them go try to kill each other on the top. And one night I think at Midget Week at Montpelier one year, I mean, I think I went from 7th to 3rd or 8th to 4th or something like that just in the last 2 laps. So there's things like that I think you can kind of pick up on sometimes and just kind of keep yourself out of trouble.
Are you disappointed that you haven't had a shot at the 500 at IndyCar?
No, not disappointed. I mean, it's one of those things that whether you're a race car driver or not, you probably get asked, hey, would you like to run the Indy 500? Yeah, who wouldn't? So you can't just sit here and say, no, you wouldn't want to run it. But am I disappointed? No, I'm not disappointed. That was never my intentions, or I never even dreamed of that.
Really?
I just wanted to drive race cars. And so, yeah, there's definitely no disappointment.
Because when Tony started the Indy Racing League, that was one of his goals, is to bring the guys up from open wheel, get them into the IndyCar series, which worked a little bit, but didn't work as well, I think, as was originally anticipated. Who was it? Was it Dave Darling that got won the series and got the test with Hemmelgarn and got his license, but never got in a car?
Well, we did the test. Panther was doing that at the time. They took the USAC champions and did a test, and I did the test in Texas with Panther. It wasn't. I finished 3rd in points behind Jason Leffler and Ryan Newman. They had already done it, so it kind of went down the line. So it was actually Russ Gamester, Dave Darlin, and I the same year went and did the test with Panther at Texas. And, it was a great experience. I did with Roger Johnson was partners with Ron Hemmelgarn. I did do one Indy Lights race. I'm not sure if they called them Indy Lights at the time, but I did one Indy Lights race at Nashville. And, it was definitely an experience and something different and would have taken some time to get used to. It's one of those things that a lot of people look at Indy cars and, you go out there and run the thing wide open and hold it out, but that's one thing by yourself to do that. But when you're in the traffic and the aero and everything, it was quite startling, I'll tell you.
And speaking of being close, if you pay attention to the qualifying for IndyCar, for the most part, usually 1 to 22 is less than 1 second, and that's tight racing and fun racing. And I think when I see some of the qualifying times for the short tracks, they're not that far behind us. Some pretty close competition. So if you're finished second, you ain't that far behind the guy that's on the pole.
No, I mean during place like during Midget Week, for example. I mean, it was literally 2/10 was the difference of being on the front row of the race to being 12th, 14th quick, and it's just not a lot. It's just, like I said, it's just very, very competitive right now.
Are you a full-time racer, or do you have a job Monday through Friday?
No, definitely not full-time. I've kind of cut back. I've been racing the midget with Scott Petrie. It's a full-time deal with the midget, so I've been concentrating on that. I haven't pursued any sprint car stuff this year. I haven't run a sprint car race all year, The Silver Crown, I was with Gene Nolan there for a few years, and he went to a one-car team with Cody Swanson, and so that was the one thing I was probably really trying to put something together to at least run the dirt Silver Crown cars. I really enjoy the dirt Silver Crown stuff, and so I'll definitely be working on that, trying to get something. But my son's been racing, and he's 10, and so it was one of those things. I can't be at a racetrack every Saturday night, and it's been a lot of fun growing with him and watching him grow.
You couldn't convince him to take up golf?
No, I never. Unfortunately, didn't try. It was one of those situations we didn't push it on him. He was 6. I started in quarter midgets when I was 5, and a lot of people start at 5. But we say we waited till he was 6, like we really gave him a whole lot of time there to wait, and mature. But we didn't want to push him into it. We didn't want him to think he had to do it just because his dad was a race car driver. So we made sure that he was asking about it and wanted to do it, and then so he did. And my daughter, she's 7, and she got in a quarter midget a few times. She loved to go out there and drive around. She'd go out there and make laps all day long, but she didn't want to race. We kind of lied to her once that this was just practice and it was a race, and she still holds that against my wife. She's still angry about that. But so, we have a lot of fun being parents. But yeah, so anyway, it's she's into cheer and now softball and even a better sport, horses.
Oh, yeah, it's cheaper
Yeah,
too.
Great, yeah, it's great. I've got some really great sponsors on the micro, and that's pretty good. So if anybody wants to horse sponsor, you let me know.
Cody Swanson was here, and I said, your kids are starting to get, are they interested in racing? Oh, we got them golf clubs. I said, really? Oh, I'm going to turn them to golf clubs, playing golf. I said, I know about 5 drivers or owners, parents, that have sets of golf clubs. They'll sell them to you because the kid didn't go for it. They went in the car.
I tried to we were in Pennsylvania a few years ago. I had the quarter midgets. We were running the sprint car, and we also had a quarter midget race out there. So I had the quarter midgets out there, and we were all at the hotel, and I had to do something. So everybody was out working on their sprint cars. I had the quarter midgets out, and then Cody was there, and his kid was running around. And I grabbed his kid, and I put him in the quarter midget, and before he could see it. And he wasn't very happy with me.
That's amazing how that happens.
Yeah.
Oh, well, but, there's a lot of sons that are following in Dad's footsteps like yourself and have done well with it. So, the thing is, I get from a lot of people, how can these guys and gals do this? You can get hurt. Well, no kidding. You can get hurt on a bicycle. You can get hurt on a motorcycle. You can get hurt in a car on the road. So what's the difference?
It is tough. It's one of those things that don't get me wrong. I mean, I question it. It's one of those situations where I look back. I would not have wanted to grow up any other way. I went in high school. I think I might have gone to 2 football games the whole time because I got done with school. I went and did something. I worked on a race car. I was racing something. I wasn't into school sports whatsoever. And at least with our kids with Kale and he played baseball, he played football, he still loves to play basketball. Like I said, Kenley's now getting into softball, but I wouldn't have wanted to grow up any other way. But we were, you're in the situation, we're in the sport, we see what we know what happens, and like I said, I was there on the track with Bryan. I saw the whole thing with Bryan, and Bryan was very close with Kale. I mean, that was there's pictures. I mean, Kale's big deal when he was little. He'd run through the pits and push people's cars in the trailer, and Bryan would wait. He'd see Kale coming. He'd wait to push the car in the trailer or go get Kale. Hey, you need to come help push it in. So it's one of those deals that you know what can happen. You know the situations, and like I said, I wouldn't want to grow up any other way doing it. And what do you do? Like I said, you can get hurt playing football. You can get hurt doing anything, but it's it is one of those things when it's your kid doing it. You certainly question whether you're making the right decision or what on that, but it's it's just one of those situations. It's part of life. It's what you live with.
Do your kids go with you on race weekends, or are they playing softball and football? And I'm busy tonight, Dad.
Yeah, no, they definitely grew up because they didn't have a choice, so they obviously went all the time. Kinley could care less. She doesn't want to go to the races. She'll not even go up and watch. She'll sit in the trailer or sit up in the front at the midget races. She'll be up in the front of the trailer, and she could care less about going. Kale's, he kind of went through a phase where he wasn't going. Now that he's a little bit older, he likes to come to the race. He pushes me on the four-wheeler up to staging, and a lot. He's helping, I kind of trying to work with him on getting to learn the cars a little bit, stuff like that. So he's been going definitely more and more and wants to go. And I think the big thing, he just likes to ride the four-wheeler is what it really is. But that was the best one when I got a text. We were somewhere, again, I don't know where we were racing, but my wife wasn't there. It was just Kale and I, and I'd get to my phone or something, and I'd look at my phone. Is that Kale on the four-wheeler pushing you? I'm like, yeah, because he's good. I mean, he's, right on the racetrack and all that, but that's her little boy out there doing that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting how families get into racing, and once you get into it, I mean, I got it in as a lark, not a lark exactly. I went to see back when they started televising the 500. They did it in movie theaters, and the first open air mall was right near my house, and they were having it, so I went there. A friend of mine had been coming here since '54. He said, "You got to watch the race." So I went there, bought a ticket, sat, and slept. I thought, well, that was a lot of fun. Who won? The next year I went back, did the same thing, fell asleep. He said, "Now enough's enough. You got to come with us." So I went down there. I had a Mercury Comet station wagon. Our wives slept inside. We slept outside, and it rained. I got up in the morning, and I said, "If you think I'm going there, you're crazy. I will not go. You guys go, but hurry back because there might not be any beer left." Well, they talked me into going, and I'm still here. And that was in 1963 or something. I'm still here. And I'm old, I know. I don't go into the grandstands because it takes too long to get there, but by the time I get there, it's time to turn around, come back, the checker flag float. But there's something about this sport, in my opinion, that is different than any other sport. I mean, poor Andrew Luck got hit so many times he had to quit, retire. But everybody on your, if they miss a block, he gets knocked down, you get up and start again. But in your sport, in the sport of motorsports, if your crew, somebody does something or forgets to do something, you could be in trouble. So to me, it's, in my opinion, the ultimate team sport because everybody has to know what they're doing and do it so you can do what you're there to do, and that's win.
It definitely is. I mean, it definitely said it is. That's what I think is unique too. It's a team sport, but then at the same time, it's not once you're in the car by yourself. So it's kind of both aspects of out there. That was one thing. Bringing my son up racing like that is the coaching side of it, and doing that where he's not. He always thought I was chewing his butt, and he's a little bit, I don't want to say emotional, but he's a little bit emotional like that, where I kind of had to learn how to talk to him and how to approach him because he would come in thinking, oh, hey, great, and here I am nitpicking at him what he's doing wrong. And I had to take a step back because when he's at basketball practice or whatever, the coaches are there the whole time coaching him. Hey, stand here, do this, pass to that guy, do this, look over here. And then you don't have that in the racing. And so that was kind of a unique perspective for me. Is like, okay, I need to back off on the coaching on how to coach and give him some room and try to make him understand that, hey, it's just you out there. I got to do this afterwards. I can't do it while it's going on like the other sports are.
Well, next Thursday and Wednesday and Thursday is the BC 39, and you will be there in full array, ready to go.
Absolutely.
And according to Tim was telling me, they just got 80-some cars now, and they expect to have about 92 or 93, which is a pretty good turnout. And it's amazing the number of guys that I'm aware of that are here because it's a Bryan Clauson memorial type thing, and I think that's quite remarkable.
It certainly is. I mean, it's IMS done a great job. Everybody involved building the racetrack did a great job doing that, and it's it's just a special event all around. Everything from the venue to the meaning, everything about it.
And it's kind of interesting how contractors donated. I think Mike Harding donated all the dirt. He said, I got to get rid of it anyway. And the contractor donated building the walls. And I mean, they've had all kinds of people step up to make the track what it is, and obviously they've done a good job with it.
Oh, they really have. My car owner, Scott Petrie, he's Petrie Excavating. He was out. He did a lot of the work beginning, and I actually talk about day job. We were. They had that back straightaway wall was temporary last year because they thought they wanted to leave that open for cars, and then they decided this year to put in a permanent wall. So even I spent a few days out there building a concrete wall with him. So doing a little construction work. Yeah, got blisters and everything, I think. So it was a rough. I had to take like 3 days off.
Oh, gee. What is this gray auto?
Gray Auto is they're out in Greenfield, right off of 40.
I assume you work there.
Working there a couple days a week. Brenton and Brandon Gray own it now, and for those, I was going to mention something, but the original Brad Gray was their father. He passed away less than a year ago, and they're actually Monday night in Rushville. They are having the inaugural Brad Gray Memorial. It's a TQ race. I know myself, Dave Darlin's going to run it. Tony Stewart's going to run it. C.J. Leary will be there. Kevin Thomas Jr. will be there. So it's just kind of Brenton and Brandon are putting the race on, and should be a pretty funny. It's kind of a fun event, but it's in memory of their dad. And I actually was going to go drive for Brad. Brad and Scott Petrie were partners, and I thought I was going to drive for Brad or meet with Brad to drive for him. When I went and met with him, he's like, well, Scott actually bought out that car, so you're really going to be driving for Scott. And but became friends with all of them, and like I said, but yeah, just spending a couple days out there helping them out their car a lot.
Well, good. Keep you out of trouble.
Something's got to.
Yeah, well, if you get in trouble, your wife will, I'm sure, step up and say something.
Nah.
The career you've had is outstanding, and to be one of only 6 guys in all the history of the United States Auto Club to win all 3 major championships is quite an accomplishment. And I got to think that, and plus winning all 3 at Eldora, the only one who's done better than that was Hewitt, and he won the stock car part of it too. And I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and he said there's been I didn't realize there was probably 110,000 people in the stands. I said, yeah, I'm sure they all have told you. I was there that night.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've heard it from everybody. Well, I can say I was there because I interviewed him up in the press room they had up on the.
I was there because he lapped me in the Silver Crown car, and I tried to follow him, and he just drove away from me. He had a line that he ran every car the same that night, and I was in Ralph Potter's car, and Tracy Potter was up spotting for me, and again, I was terrible at Eldora, but he passed me, and I tried to follow him, and didn't work.
He was gone.
Didn't work.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come here. When I saw you a week or so ago, I asked if you do it. You said sure. So I said, before you change your mind, I better send you a text and confirm it, and you're here.
Oh yeah, always happy to be here.
Glad to have you stop by. Good luck at the BC 39, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
One of the best, Jerry Coons Jr. Now, next week, I had hoped to get some of the guys from they're going to run the BC 39, but they got better ideas than mine, and that is they're going to have the drawing for heats and so forth at the USAC office from 4:30 to 6, and then they go over to the museum at 7, so that took care of that. Although I'm still trying to weasel a couple that can come in and then go there a little late to the museum. But we'll be here next week. We'll have some good guests, I can assure you, and I've got a biggie coming in either next week or the week after. So you want to be here for that. Until next week, Don Kay saying thanks for being here, watching, listening. We'll see you next week. Good night. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anytime.